Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon, teacher.
Good afternoon.
Hello, teacher.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay. What about you all?
Fine, fine. Trying to survive in this difficult samsara.
Yeah. Life is becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah, too much difficult because of this corona.
So today we'll be continuing our discussion of the Mahayana movements in India, right? So if you remember, last week we have been discussing about the general ideas about the Mahayana movement, some of the important ideas, and then particularly the thoughts of Madhyamaka system. We will be continuing with that. I will be discussing some more aspects of Madhyamaka system, and then followed by a discussion of Yogachara thoughts. And after that, I will be displaying some of the presentations by some of the students. Okay. But before starting today's lecture, I'd like to say a few words with regard to your presentation and also your assignments. Okay. So I have noticed that those of you who have sent your, recordings of your presentation, it seems like you have a lot of things to say. So the time that was allocated was not probably sufficient. But I think it is important that actually when you agree to, a certain time for your presentation, or even, when you are supposed to write an essay within a particular amount of words, it is better that you stick to that. That is also a kind of a practice. Otherwise, you would find that, for example, last time I sent you some documents. Among the documents were some, encyclopedia entry of Sarvastivada Abhidharma, Sarvastivada school, or some of the masters from these Abhidharma schools by these professors, K.L. Dhammajuti and Professor Charles Williman, especially. You see that especially Professor Dhammajuti, he has composed a text on Sarvastivada Abhidharma, which is about 600 to 700 pages long. You see, it is quite a thick book, but when he was writing for this encyclopedia, he just, wrote everything in summary within just few pages on the Sarvastivada Abhidharma. So I hear that sometimes some of you, tend to say that the kind of information that you gather for writing your essay, you can write more than the word limitation that is provided. And the same thing goes with your presentation. If you remember, the time period was specified to be 7 to 10 minutes, right? It seems like some of you want to speak more than 20 minutes. So I'd like to extend this time for you, for your presentation. You can speak about 12 to 15 minutes. Okay. So I think that would be sufficient, and I would expect everyone to prepare your presentation, record your presentation within this period of time, 12 to 15 minutes. Is it clear? Yes. So you have to know what are the informations that you think important to discuss, to include in your presentation, and what are the informations that you think not so important to include in your presentation. So that is how you have to make your choice. Okay. And with regard to your essay also, when you choose a topic, few more things with regard to your essay. Nowadays, I notice that most of the students, they try to find information from internet. That is quite okay. If you want to have some general understanding on a certain topic, you can always look for the information in the internet, Wikipedia, wherever you can find. But you have to be careful that the information that you are gathering from internet, if that is authentic or not. Okay. Basically, for example, in the academic study of Buddhism, or even if you want to really know something seriously, sincerely, not just in the case of academic study, you have to always depend on authentic sources, right? So either you have to get the information from established masters, or you have to know which text to read, which articles to read, right? Because when you look at some of the writings in the internet, sometimes you'd notice that there is no mentioning of writers, so you do not know who wrote it, right? And sometimes when you see that some people have written it, probably you are not sure if they are really established scholar, or if they have gathered a sufficient amount of knowledge to write that piece of writing, and so on. Okay, so sometimes I provide you some books, articles, and essays. Last few lecture, I think I did not provide you essays or articles, any extra essays or articles. If you want, I can provide you some of the text and essays and articles with regard to this Mahayana movement, Madhyamika system of thought, Yogachara system of thought, and so on. But I'm not sure if you are going to read them, because I found that the information, the text that I have provided to you earlier, and some of the questions and doubts that I have received from some of you should not really arise. Some of these questions should not arise if you have gone through these documents, and if you are careful enough in the lecture also, because most of the important things I try to cover in my lecture as well. Okay. And in any case, I think it is very, very important to be really careful to find out authentic sources for gathering your knowledge. Otherwise, the purpose of joining all these Buddhist courses is to have a better understanding of the message of the Buddha, right? But then, if your approach is wrong, if you are not careful enough, if you are just for the purpose of, easily collecting the materials, or just for the sake of knowing things very quickly, if you are stuck into this kind of internet sources only, then I think you are really harming yourself. Okay, so my suggestion is that all of you who are writing essays, it can be short essay or longer one, just focus on one or two fixed text or essays. Just read them thoroughly, make your own notes, and then write your essay, because in any case you are not going to write anything new, right? So what you are going to do in your essay is just you try to write things in your own way, on a particular topic that has been already discussed in some of these texts. What you can do probably is that if you are really, critically reading this text, you may have a certain questions that you can pose in your, writing in your essay. Not necessarily you have to provide the answers. You can at least raise the questions. Okay, so I think, yeah, so that is all that I have to say about your essays and also presentation. Any question? No question? Okay, then if there is no question or remark, we can start our class. Okay, let me share my screen. So as I said, if you want to have some understanding on all these topics, you just select a few authentic sources, and then you try to read them thoroughly, make your own notes, and you have your own understanding. Once you have a general understanding on a particular subject matter, then you can explore further into other text and gather more information. So in the last week lecture, I focused particularly on Eckewarder's text, apart from some other text. Okay, and I realized that when I was comparing different texts, I realized that for the exposition of this Madhyamika system of thought and Yogachara system of thought, of course there are so many books, and this book by Peter Harvey, Introduction to Buddhism, also provides a very good information. So today, for the discussion of Yogachara thought especially, I based myself on this Peter Harvey's text particularly. Okay. Let us continue with this discussion on the Madhyamaka system of thought. So basically what we have been discussing is that when you talk about Madhyamika school, it was founded by Acharya Nagarjuna. That is at least the traditional belief. He is said to be a South Indian monk. And last time, if you remember, we came to know that there is an opinion that says that he could be from, from a place close to Nalanda. Okay, but I think, and then there was a discussion about several Nagarjuna, and so on. But the one that has founded this particular school is said to be from South India. Okay, and I think it is very close to this place called Nagarjuna Kunda. He was a philosopher and mystic, and we come to know later on that in his time there were certain tantric masters. They have been, continuing their tantric practices, Naropa, Tilopa, and so on. It seems that some of these tantric masters, met Acharya Nagarjuna and got their teaching from Acharya Nagarjuna as well. So that shows that Nagarjuna was not just a philosopher, he was also an expert in this tantric system of thought. The school's foundation document is his Mula Madhyamaka Karika, verses on the fundamentals of middle way. This argues for what Nagarjuna sees as the true middle way of the Buddha, seeking to convince those not accepting the Mahayana sutras that the early scriptures properly understood lead to seeing that everything is empty of both inherent independent existence and inherent nature, that is an essence. So you would find that in this foundational text of Nagarjuna, here and there he has quoted statements and verses from early sutras, especially the name of Kachayana Gotta Sutta is mentioned, right? And when there is a discussion of true truth, for example, Sammuti Satcha and Paramatta Satcha, there is also a reference to these two truths to Theravada Buddhism in general. And also, in a way, you can find reference to these two types of truths in early Buddhist text. So, and we know one of the important texts in the Mahayana system is Prajnaparamita literature. And among the Prajnaparamita literature, the Heart Sutra, Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra, is said to be the shortest one, condensed one. Okay, so today, if we have time, I will be showing you these two suttas together. One is the Anatta Lakkana Sutta, which is said to be the second sutta, second discourse that was given by the Buddha to his first 5 disciples in Saranath, right? And then I will be showing you this Prajnaparamita Sutra as well. Okay, in the Anatta Lakkana Sutta, there is the discussion of Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, specifically Anatta. And then in the description of Prajnaparamita Sutra, you have the discussion of Sunyata, or emptiness. And both the suttas deal with 5 aggregates, basically. Okay, so if any of you wants to, write an essay on these 2 suttas, focusing on the idea of Anatta and emptiness, you are most welcome. Okay. Buddha Palita and then Bhava Viveka built up the popularity of the school. They later provided its logical methods, drawing on the ideas of the Buddhist logician Dignaga, and developed a new interpretation of Nagarjuna's ideas, thus forming the Swatantrika Madhyamika school. Its interpretation was then disputed by Chandrakirti, late 6th century, who built on the work of Buddha Palita to found the Prasangika Madhyamaka school as a definitive statement of Madhyamaka. So it seems that this Madhyamaka school later on divided into 2 important sections. Chandrakirti's ideas are expressed in such works as his commentary on the Madhyamaka Karika, the Prasannapada, and Shantideva drew on this perspective in his Bodhicharya Avatara, an influential overview of the path of the Mahayana Bodhisattva. Shantarakshita and his pupil Kamalashila also added some Yogachara ideas to those of the Swatantrika, thus forming the Yogachara Madhyamika school. The above Madhyamika writers had a great influence, specifically in Tibet. In summary, three standpoints of the Madhyamika school are things, that is persons, modes, tables, mountains, that can be analyzed into their parts, which may be themselves further analyzable, lack swabhava, as they are dependent on those parts, be these physical or mental, and have no true existence of their own. In this sense, lacking both inherent existence and inherent nature. So you can analyze beings and things into dharmas, but these dharmas lack swabhava. Dharmas, which is what one reaches by rigorous analysis into parts, are dependent on other dharmas for their arising. They lack swabhava as they are not independent, hence are lacking in inherent existence. So there is no inherent existence of anything. Thirdly, both everyday things and dharmas are also dependent on imputation by mental designation in relation to other things or dharmas. They lack an inherent nature, one from their own side. Even nirvana is dependent in this sense. Okay, so nirvana is considered to be one of the dharma, right? Even in the Theravada Abhidharma as well, but it is considered as a asankata dhamma, not sankata dhamma, unconditioned dhamma, but it is also explained to be, selfless, okay, anatta. With regard to this topic, conventional truth and language, it says that the Madhyamika school holds that confusion over the nature of phenomena arises because people do not understand how the Buddha taught according to two levels of truth or reality. Conventional truth, that is Samriti Satya, and profound ultimate truth, that is Paramartha Satya. So one has to be very, very clear about these two, types of truth. So in the early Buddhism, for example, there was a discussion of this persons, things, and so on to be considered as conventional truth, right? And the primary analysis of this individual and beings that we find in the early Buddhist text is in terms of, aggregates, khanda and dhatu and ayatana, basically, right? 5 khandas, 12 dhatus, and 18 ayatanas. It is in the Abhidharmic period that this Nama Rupa or 5 aggregates have been analyzed into dharmas, right? So then these dharmas are considered to represent higher truth, ultimate truth. So they are regarded as ultimately, ultimate constituent of the phenomenal existence. They are considered to be the building blocks of one's existence in samsara, right? But in the case of Nagarjuna, we find that even this analysis of, beings and things into dharmas does not really represent ultimate truth, right? The concept of two levels of truth already existed in Abhidharma. There, conventional truths were those expressed using terms such as person and thing. Ultimate truth is more exact, expressed by talking of dharmas, ultimate realities. For the Madhyamika writers, however, talk of dharmas is just another kind of provisional conventional truth. Such conventional truths should not be confused with ultimate truths. That is, truths about supposedly essential ultimate realities. To see them like this is delusion. The real ultimate truth is that all things discussed in terms of conventional truth are empty of ultimate essential reality. They are indeed conventional. Okay, so in a way, you cannot really logically understand, by using logic, you cannot really understand what is ultimate truth, because somehow you have to make use of language, make use of ideas and everything. What is ultimate truth is beyond the linguistic expression, logic, thinking, ideas. Okay, that is what it means. So that is why we find in the discussion of Nagarjuna, he provided the limitation of, using Chatushkuti formula, using the logic, he explained the limitation of logic, how you can really, how you cannot really go further to understand what is, the ultimate reality in the absolutely ultimate sense of the term. And we find similar indication in early Buddhist texts that, when the Buddha was asked by a certain Brahmin, Vachagutta, with regard to the existence of a Tathagata, does Tathagata, exist after his death, after his passing away? Does he not exist? Does he exist, both exist and not exist? Does he neither exist nor does not exist? The Buddha kept silent. They are regarded as unanswered questions. There is a paper by Professor Y. Karunadasa on this topic. Of course, I think you will have discussion on these unanswered questions in different texts, but I would suggest you particularly to look at this essay, and also, look at this essay, the discussion of, unanswered questions in this essay by Professor Karunadasa, and then you can compare these ideas, these understandings with that of Acharya Nagarjuna. Seeing them thus is wisdom, leading to non-attachment to conventional realities, but a greatly enhanced ability to skillfully work with them. So once you have clear understanding of things as they are, you can deal with them better. So that is the understanding here. In the Shunyatavadin perspective, each phenomena lacks an inherent nature. Thus, one dharma cannot ultimately be distinguished from another. The notion of the sameness of dharmas, their shared nature is emptiness. As the Heart Sutra says, whatsoever is material form, that is emptiness, and whatsoever is emptiness, that is material form. And similarly for the other four bundles making up a person. So this is a discussion with regard to 5 aggregates. Emptiness, though, is not some ultimate basis and substance of the world, like the Brahman of the Upanishads. It implies that no such self-existent substance exists. The world is a web of fluxing, interdependent, baseless phenomena. Nagarjuna, in fact, equates emptiness with the principle of conditioned arising. For this logically leads to it, whatever is conditioned arising, that is explained to be emptiness, that being a dependent origination, Prashnapti, is itself the middle way, Pratipat Madhyama. I think maybe we can look at these 2 suttas together, and then you can have probably better understanding of anatta and emptiness idea. Can you see my computer screen clearly? Is it clear?
Yes, teacher, it's clear.
Do I need to make it bigger? Yes, so here I try to provide a summary presentation of these two suttas. Now here you have Anattalakkhana Sutta on the left, and on the right you have Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. What we can find in the Anattalakkhana Sutta, as I said, this is considered as the second discourse of the Buddha that he delivered to his 5 old friends. And we have to keep in mind that these 5 friends, they have been practicing asceticism together with the Buddha for a long period of time. We also have to keep in mind that at the end of this discourse, as it is recorded in the text, that all these 5 colleagues, 5 friends, became arahant. Okay, so that means they have realized the truth as it is. So what it discusses is that form, feeling, etc., that is 5 aggregates, rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, are without self, right? They are anatta, and hence they are not in control of anyone, right? That is the first statement that is made. Then it says, if form, etc., were self, they would not lead to affliction. One would have them to be as one likes. Okay. So affliction is connected to this idea of self and not self. So in truth, the 5 aggregates do not possess self, right? They lack self. There is no atta in the 5 aggregates. But there is affliction. What is the reason that there is affliction? Because of the confusion with regard to self, right? And therefore there is attachment to self. The nature of the 5 aggregates is that they are in constant change, anicca, and thus they contribute to suffering, not happiness. The same logic applies here as well. The samanya lakshana, general characteristic, universal characteristics of 5 aggregates is that they are in constant change. But due to this false idea of self, due to our attachment to self, we attach to these 5 aggregates as I, me, and mine, right? Therefore, there is suffering, not happiness, because something that changes constantly, we try to grasp them as permanent, not changing. We have different expectation, right? And as they change, produce suffering, so they cannot be regarded as I, me, and mine. So this is the logic that was presented in this sutta. Because they change constantly, and because they produce suffering, therefore they cannot be regarded as I, me, and mine. Because if something that belongs to you, you would be able to control them as you wish. Any kind of form, feelings, etc., whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all form should be seen as it really is, with correct wisdom, thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So the phrase used is sammapayaya, with correct wisdom, okay? Not just with wisdom, but with correct wisdom. Sammapayaya should be seen as it really is. Yatha bhutam dattabbam should be seen, right? Yatha bhutam, as it really is. And what would be the understanding then? This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Thus, a noble disciple generates revulsion towards form. So when you correctly understand 5 aggregates to be impermanent, lacking self, when you see these 5 aggregates as they really are with correct wisdom, there is then a kind of revulsion towards them, nibbindati. Okay? From that feeling of revulsion, there is then the feeling of dispassionateness. Okay? You become dispassionate, virajati. And then there is freedom, vimucchati. And then there is the knowledge of freedom, vimuttang iti jnanam hoti. He understands khina jati vusitang brahmacharyang katang karaniyang naparang itattayati pajanati. So this is his understanding that destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. So this state of being refers to the journey in the cycle of samsara. The journey in the cycle of samsara stops at this moment, and he is aware of that. Okay, so this is last statement is used to define the state of arahanthood, right? So therefore, and of course, in the Mahavagga, I think you would find that the Buddha is saying that, now there are 6 arahants in the world, the 5 monks plus the Buddha. Now let's look at the description in the Prajnaparamita Vidaya Sutra. Here, it is the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara who is speaking to Sariputra. Okay, so Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is regarded as one of the advanced bodhisattvas in the Mahayana tradition, right? And Sariputra is regarded in terms of wisdom just next only to the Buddha. Okay, so here Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is addressing Sariputra. So in the beginning it says, while dwelling in the practice of perfection of wisdom. So what it shows here is that it is going to be a discussion on the perfection of wisdom, higher wisdom. Okay, Arya Avalokiteshvara realizes that the 5 aggregates are empty of self-nature. He addresses Sariputra saying, form, etc., again the 5 aggregates, are equated with emptiness. Form is emptiness, feelings are emptiness, perception is emptiness, right? Consciousness is emptiness. They are not different from each other. In other words, emptiness is form, etc., and form, etc., is emptiness. As they are empty, so there is no arising, no ceasing, no purity, no impurity, no deficiency, no completeness. So you have to be careful enough to understand these statements, because here is the discussion is focusing on the idea of lacking of self nature and emptiness. So from the perspective of emptiness, from the perspective of lack of self nature, from the perspective of soullessness, there is no arising, no ceasing, no purity, no impurity, no deficiency, no completeness. And thus, in emptiness, there is no khanda, no ayatana, no dhatu. So this is from the perspective of perfection of wisdom. There is no ignorance, no destruction of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, no destruction of old age and death. So this represents the 12 links formula of dependent origination, as we can find in the early Buddhist text. Right? You can look at this formula again closely, then I think you would have better understanding in Anuloma order and also in Patiloma order. Similarly, there is no suffering, arising of suffering, cessation of suffering, path leading to the cessation of suffering. There is no knowledge, no attainment, no non-attainment. Thus, due to non-attainment, a bodhisattva relies on the perfection of wisdom, dwells his mind unobstructed, he does not tremble, overcomes the unreal, that is wrong perceptions, and attains nirvana. Thus, the perfection of wisdom is considered as the great mantra, relying on which all the Buddhas of the 3 times attain the Anuttara Samma Sambodhi. Look at the description here. The emphasis is on Anuttara Samma Sambodhi, right? Not Arahanthood. The mantra is Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasangate, Bodhi Swaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond awakening blessings. So from these 2 suttas, you can find the similarities and also the differences. Okay, so as I said, if anyone wishes to write an essay on the idea of anatta and emptiness, basing on these 2 suttas and the discussions around these 2 suttas, you can write your essay. You can go ahead and write your essay on this.
Sorry, about what, teacher? About the Prajna Paramita?
Yes.
We can write our essay about the Prajna Paramita.
Yes, of course. Why not? You can write your essay on Prajna Paramita. I was suggesting if you would like to write your essay on, both these suttas, comparing these 2 suttas.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
Yes, teacher, I have a question in the point 3 of Prajna Paramita Sutra.
Okay.
When it says purity and no purity, no impurity. That is talking about the kleshas, right? Or the astravas?
Yeah, right. Klesha, purity and no purity. So, Kilesha and absence of Kilesha. The word for purity is Visuddhi, right? Visuddhi is the word for purity. Parisuddhi or Visuddhi, Suddhi. But then you would find, especially in the Yogachara system of thought, when there is a discussion of Tathagata Garbha, immaculate nature of mind, completely pure mind, then this discussion becomes very, very clear, because they are talking about kileshas, and that these kileshas are connected to Klistamanas, right? Or Agantuka kileshas. The original nature of mind is pure, But when it is covered with all these kleshas, it becomes impure. The purpose of the practice is to purify this mind by removing all this dust and impurities. So yes, this is referring to kleshas and absence of kleshas.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Okay, so hopefully someone would be writing the essay, on these two suttas, and we'll have better understanding of these two ideas, I guess. Okay, now let's continue with our discussion. Now let's focus our discussion on the Yogachara system of thought. So as I said, these two schools, Yogachara and Madhyamika system of thought, represent basically the philosophical a movement of the Mahayana system, but also you would find a lot of descriptions with regard to practices, for generating this ultimate wisdom or perfection of wisdom, representing the understanding of emptiness, and also especially in the Yogachara system, for example, how you should go about in the path of Bodhisattva practice, right? Practice of Bodhisattva, how you should generate the Bodhicitta and proceed onto the Bodhisattva path. So one of the most important texts in the Yogachara system is Yogachara Bhumi Shastra, that provides you the descriptions about different stages of Bodhisattva path. So as it says here, ideas of the Yogachara school are probably first adumbrated in the early strata of the Yogachara Bhumi Shastra, attributed to Arya Asanga, but with ideas predating them. They are also rooted in the ideas of certain sutras which began to appear in the 3rd century Common Era. The most important is the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, freeing the underlying meaning. The sutra sees itself as a third turning of the Dharma wheel, surpassing the first two turnings. The teachings on the 4 true realities of the spiritually ennobled and the perfection of wisdom sutras. So the first one represents the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, that is considered to be the first turning of the wheel, right? As the term itself suggests, Dhammacakkappavattana, turning of the wheel of the Dhamma. And the second turning of the wheel is said to be when this perfection of wisdom literature was found, right, by Nagarjuna. And here it says the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, and the discussion contains within the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra is considered as representing the third turning of the wheel. The Mahayana Abhidharma Sutra is another such text. The influential Lankavatara Sutra, which gradually developed from around 300 Common Era, also contains many Yogachara ideas in its unsystematic summary of Mahayana teachings. The Yogachara was founded as a separate school by Asanga, seen by tradition as a monk ordained in the Vibhajyavadin Mahishashaka fraternity. His teacher was one Maitreya Natha or Maitreya, seen by Asanga as the heavenly Bodhisattva Maitreya. In time, Asanga converted his half-brother to the Mahayana, that is Vasubandhu, who composed the Sarvastivadin Abhidharma Kosha and its Bhashya. Asanga's works include the Mahayana Sangraha, Compendium of the Mahayana, the Abhidharma Samuchaya, collection of Abhidharma, this being a Yogachara version of the Abhidharma, and a commentary on the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra. Several other works associated with Asanga are attributed by either Chinese or Tibetan tradition to Maitreya, in the sense that this Bodhisattva inspired Asanga to write them. The most philosophically important of this is the Madhyanta Vibhaga. Yes, I think that's Mr. Sami wants to say something.
Yes, teacher. So I just want a clarification. You said it was this one. What's his name? Not. Can you go? No. Can you go up a little bit? Who's the one who discovered the first Mahayana sutras?
Nagarjuna, you mean?
Yeah, Nagarjuna. He's the one who discovered the first Mahayana sutras, which are this one, the Prajnaparamita sutras.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when did that happen? I mean, towards like the 1st century or something?
In the 1st, 2nd century Common Era.
So before Nagarjuna, there was no such thing as Mahayana.
Yeah, that is the idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so Madhyanta Vibhaga. So Madhyanta Vibhaga is one of the texts that is philosophically important. It means discrimination between the middle and extreme. So you would find that everybody is trying to understand the idea, the concept of middle, Majjhima. Okay, what does it exactly mean by Majjhima? And I think this is significant because in the very first sutta, the expression is used, right? Majjena, no, ubo ante anupagamma, Majjena dhammang deseti, I'm not sure, when talking about this Noble Eightfold Path, right? In the first sutta. And then the two extremes mentioned are self-mortification and extreme sensual indulgence, right? So I think, and then we come to know about this idea of, everything exists as one extreme, and then everything does not exist as one extreme. And then avoiding these two extremes, the Buddha teaches the teaching in the middle, following the middle, and that is imasming sati idang hoti, and so on. And 12 links of Paticcasamuppada represent this, middle doctrine, middle teaching in the early Buddhist text. And we find that, in the time of Nagarjuna and all his students, everyone is trying to explain this middle position. Even in the case of Yogachara system, especially when you look at this text, for example, Madhyanta Vibhaga, right? So from the doctrinal perspective, philosophically, they are trying to explain this middle position. What is this? What is exactly this middle position? Again, there is an article by Professor Karunadasa on the origin of this middle position, origin of this middle, teaching in early Buddhism, and he discusses in his essay this middle position, taking up this first discourse especially, and also, of course, he was referring to so many other discourses, and he was providing kind of background why this idea of middle is very important, why the Buddha came up with this idea of middle. So there is an article by Professor Karunadasa, on this. I think it is called Sasatavada and Uchedavada, and a Buddhist approach to middle or something like that, you know. So I will provide you the complete title later. Vasubandhu's most important works are the Trimshatika Karika or Trimsika, 30 verses, the Vimshatika Karika, 20 verses, and his commentary on this, the Vimshatika Vritti, the Tri Swabhava Nirdesha, exposition of the three natures, and his commentary on the Madhyanta Vibhaga, the Madhyanta Vibhaga Karika Bhashya. You would find that Acharya Vasubandhu has been really contributing a lot, especially philosophically. He was really, you know, very active, studying and also producing so many important texts, both for Sarvastivada system of thought and also Yogachara system of thought. In the 6th century, there lived two important Yogachara teachers, Siramati and Dharmapala, with the ideas of the later being taken to China by Xuanzang, founder of the Fashiang school. Also associated with the Yogachara, the logicians and epistemologist Dignaga, that is in the 5th to 6th century Common Era, and Dharmakirti, the 6th century Common Era. While Vasubandhu was primarily a theoretician and gave the school its classical form, Asanga's writings were deeply rooted in the practice of dhyana, Pali jhana, or meditative trance. Accordingly, Yogachara means the practice of yoga, yoga achara, referring to the Bodhisattva's path of meditative development. While the Madhyamikas and Yogacharas had their philosophical differences, they both had Buddhahood as their goal and can be seen as being complementary in their approaches. The Madhyamikas had an analytical, dialectic approach to reality, emphasizing prajna. The Yogacharas emphasized samadhi, meditative concentration, and the withdrawal of the mind from sensory phenomena. Just as the early Buddhists sought to transcend limiting attachment by seeing phenomena as impermanent, painful, and non-self, so the Madhyamikas sought this by seeing them as empty of inherent nature or existence, and the Yogacharas sought it by seeing perceived phenomena as mental constructions. So very briefly, here you find the discussion of, you know, three different approaches. In the early Buddhist text, the approach that was taken, that was used, is that when you see five aggregates and everything as anicca, dukkha, and anatta, then you are able to overcome this attachment, false idea of self, right? And then you can have a good understanding of reality as it is. You are liberated. In the Madhyamika system, what is emphasized is prajna primarily, and with this wisdom, prajna, what you see is that you see empty of everything, right? Everything is empty. There is no swabhava, no self nature, no essence in anything. In the Yogachara system, the approach is that you see what is happening to be, a representation of your own mind. This is all mental construction. Mentally you construct it. So there is nothing real that is happening, really. So there is an example of mirage, for example, especially when there is a discussion of Tri Swabhava. The phenomenal existence is explained in terms of Tri Swabhava. So when you see a mirage, it is an illusion. right? You see water-like things, but the situation takes place depending on, strong heat and so on. Knowing that is, knowing the causes and conditions contributing to the appearance of this marriage is one level of understanding. Looking at it as marriage is another level of understanding. And understanding the conditions properly and understanding what exactly it is a third kind of understanding. We'll come to that later very quickly. The withdrawal of the mind from sensory phenomena in the Yogachara seems related to what in early Buddhism is described as the apprehension of nirvana as the signless, that which is devoid of indications which the mind can latch on to or interpret, just as the Madhyamaka path is related to seeing nirvana as the empty. Animitta and sunya. So yes, even in early Buddhist text, when there is a discussion of nirvana, all the time you would find that it is explained mostly using negative expressions. What is nirvana is, lobokkayo, dosakkayo, mohakkayo, the nibbana. It is absence of loba, dosa, and moha, right? It is ajatang, abhutang, akatang, asankatang. It is unmade, unproduced, unborn, unconditioned, right? Opposite of samsara. There is only, I think, in one place where it is explained with positive term is that when it says Nibbanang Paramang Sukhamti, right? Nibbana represents the highest bliss, right? Otherwise, Nibbana is explained in terms of having no self, sabbe dhamma anattati, right? And here you'd find it, one of its characteristics is said to be animitta, signless. The Madhyamikas regarded the normal experience of the world as a product of conceptual constructions, but had not concerned themselves with the psychological details of this process. The Yogacharas addressed this question and related ones. For example, if the Sarvastivadin idea of past dharmas as still existing is not acceptable, how memories and the effects of past karma transmitted over time, if a being is composed of a stream of momentary events as described in the Abhidharma? What is the connection between, let's say, two momentary dharmas? Here the Yogachara answer built on those of earlier schools, such as the Sautrantikas, who had posited a series of momentary karmic seeds, producing themselves over time, and the Vibhajyavadins and later Theravadins, who had posited Bhavanga consciousness, which gave continuity to personality, even through dreamless sleep. In continuing to wrestle with such questions, the Yogacharas developed a new Abhidharma literature set within a Mahayana framework. So you have a Yogachara set of Abhidharma. Okay, so dealing with the karmic process, and in the case of Theravada, for example, they came up with this idea of Bhavanga. You'd find this discussion of Bhavanga in the Abhidharma, Theravada Abhidharma literature, right? The 17 thought moments in the Bhavanga Chitta. Active mind and non-active mind, right? Unconscious mind. So when it is not active, for example, in the state of dreamless sleep, how does a mind function? So this karmic process is explained in terms of unconscious mind. Okay, so even in the unconscious level, mind is functioning in terms of this vijnana santati, stream of consciousness, in terms of momentary, cognitive process. And later we find that in the Yogachara system, they have this idea of alaya vijnana, which is quite similar to the idea of bhavanga chitta. Central to the Yogachara is an emphasis on consciousness. Indeed, an alternative later name for the school was Vijnanavada, the consciousness teaching. In early Buddhism, the flask of consciousness is seen as the crucial link between rebirths, and a transformed state of consciousness is associated with nirvana. So you have Chuti Chitta, and then you have Patisandhi Chitta. So the link between this life and next life is just this, right? From Chuti Chitta, that is the last thought moment of this life, and Patisandhi Chitta is the relinking consciousness, that is the first thought moment of the next life, right? And yeah, here it says nirvana is represented as a transformed state of consciousness. So in a way, I think it is, yeah, you can say sachitta pariyodapana, right? Complete purification of mind. The perceiving mind is also that which interprets experience so as to construct a world, and can be the basis for experiencing the world transcending nirvana. So what it suggests is that in this unconscious mind, there is a possibility of, confusion, and also there is a possibility of liberation. Okay, so again, this is connected to this early Buddhist idea of yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara, wise attention and unwise attention. And we find this to be discussed in one of the important Yogachara texts, Ratnagotra Vibhaga, also called Uttara Tantra Shastra. This is the text that discuss about this idea of Tathagata Garbha and different categories of beings, and how all these different categories of beings are afflicted by different types of kileshas, and what are the paths that should be followed to purify the minds. But in any case, everyone is possessing this Tathagata Garbha, essence of Buddhahood. The world is led by mind. In the Yogachara, the role of the mind is constructing the world. In constructing the world is so emphasized that all concepts of an external physical reality are rejected. The perceived world is seen as representation only, vijñāpti matra, or mind or thought only, chitta matra. So nothing external to mind exists in reality. Any questions so far? Do you like to have a break for some times? Then probably we can come back and continue our discussion. Sorry? Hmm? I did not understand. The process. Yes, of course, it is connected to the functioning of mind and the original nature of mind, right? And then there is this idea of beings wandering in the samsara from the beginningless time, right? So therefore the discussion is that I mean, if you have been wandering in the samsara for beginningless time, when and how can you end this? Is there a possibility for you to really overcome this cycle of samsara? So when there is a discussion of the possibility of overcoming the cycle of samsara, then there is the discussion of this pure immaculate consciousness within you. It is there. You have this potentiality. You have this bodhicitta or tathagata garbha or whatever it is called. You just have to follow a certain path of practice to overcome all these troubles in life, in samsara. You have to remove all these kleshas, then only you can discover this pure mind. Okay, so that is the idea. But of course, even though there is this tathagata garbha that is present in everybody, there are different categories of beings, and because there are different categories of beings with different characteristics and so on, so there are different practices that are provided for different types of beings. Yes, of course, there are a lot of differences in terms of explanations and approaches. There are also similarities. Okay, I think if there is no question or remark, we can have a break for about 15-20 minutes. Then we can come back to continue our discussion.
Teacher?
Yes?
According to Theravada, there are something with something movements in Viti process. So how about Madhyamika? Madhyamika is similar as Theravada in Viti process.
In the Madhyamaka system of thought, I think there is not so much of discussion of this thought process as we have been seeing. It is in the Yogachara system of thought. There is a discussion of different types of consciousness, 8 types of consciousness. The 6 consciousness represent the 6 types of consciousness, pravriti vijnana, related to 6 indriyas. And then there is subconscious mind that is termed as Klistamanas. And then there is alaya vijnana. And of course, as we have been discussing in the Yogachara system, also they have this, Abhidharma literature, and there is a discussion of thought process and so on. So, yes, everybody is, I think, accepting this idea that the process of consciousness is momentary. There is momentary consciousness, vijnana santati. That is, I think, accepted by everyone, especially those, believing in the Abhidharma system. But then the discussion is what is the underlying, condition, how the karmic force exist or travel in different moments in the Vijnana Santati. So with regard to that, there are different explanations.
Yes, teacher. Thank you, teacher.
Okay, let's have a break. Okay, let us resume the class now. Yes, so we have been talking about this some of the ideas of Yogacara school of thought. Now let us discuss this point mentioned here, the Yogacara view of the role of nature of consciousness. So we came to know that one of the term used to identify Yogacara is Vijñapti Matra or Chitta Matra, consciousness only or thought only. Now let us say the description with regard to the nature of consciousness that the Yogacharins, have the Yogacharins upheld. In previous Abhidharma, consciousness, Vijnana or Chitta, thought or mind, was seen to be of 7 types. Consciousness related to each of the 5 physical senses, mind consciousness and mind organ, with the latter processing the input from the senses, often in a way skewed by the I am conceit. Manas was seen by the Yogacharas as a process of subliminal thought, which organizes data from the 6 consciousnesses into the experience of a meaningful world according to set categories. It contains the basis both for correct judgments and misperception of reality, and for both skillful and unskillful karma, which are generated by volitions accompanying the 6 consciousness. As a basis for misperceptions, it is called Klistamanas, defiled or afflicted mind. As in earlier Abhidharma, each instance of a type of chitta is seen as a momentary event accompanied by an appropriate collection of mental states. Yeah, so what it says is that in the Abhidharma literature, there have been the discussion of 7 types of consciousness, 5 physical, 5 consciousness related to 5 physical senses, and then the mind consciousness and mind organs separately. And then we find here that the 6 types of consciousness that are regarded as pravritti vijnana or active consciousness, connected to 6 indriyas, they function in relation to this with the influence of Klistamanas, as it says. This Klistamanas is said to be the 7th consciousness, or as it is termed here by the Yogacharas, as a process of subliminal thought. So, and then there is this 8th consciousness that is called Alaya Vijnana. So the 7th consciousness, Klistamana, seems to function as a kind of intermediator between the active consciousness and Alaya Vijnana. Because it is the 7th one, it is represented to be this, subconscious idea of I or mine. It is defiled. that is the meaning of klista manas, defiled thought, defiled consciousness. So this has the potentiality of, you know, performing all kinds of actions, good or bad. So this is the chitta that is, you know, participating in all these different types of karma and so on. Manas and the six consciousness represent only the surface of the mind, which is active and oriented towards objects. There is, though, an additional eighth form of consciousness, which is the ashraya, or basis of the rest. It is their fundamental root. Devoid of purposive activity and only indistinctly aware of objects, it is an underlying unconscious level of mind known as alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness. So why it is called a storehouse is that it is said that it contains all the seeds of all types of karmas. So you can say in a way that all kinds of sankharas, karmic forces, are, you know, stored in this storehouse consciousness. So it is filled with all kinds of seeds. When the indriyas come in contact with objects, with the influence of Klistamanas, the seeds, karmic forces that have been stored in the storehouse consciousness become active. So if you're, you know, through the eye chakku indriya, your chakku indriya meets an object, and then you generate chakku vijnana, and then with the influence of klistamanas, you generate, you know, good or bad feeling. If it is a bad feeling, if you generate, for example, anger, so anger generated through eye consciousness should be related to alaya vijnana, in the sense that the seat of anger is present in the alaya vijnana, you know, from so many lifetimes, and this now you know, became active. Okay, this is the seed that became active, that came in the forefront. Okay, and therefore you have this anger mind. Okay, so in other words, if the seed is not there, if the seed of anger is not there, you cannot be angry. That is the idea. The seed is there. So the practices are to, you know, remove all these different karmic forces or seeds from the alaya to make it pure. Okay, free from all kinds of defiled thoughts or, you know, karmic forces or seeds. The Lankavatara Sutra says the seven active consciousness as related to alaya as waves are related to the ocean. So there is a simile there of you know, waves and ocean given here. The active consciousnesses are said to represent waves, whereas the alaya represent the deeper layer of ocean. They are not really separate from it, but are simply perturbations in it. These perturbations do not affect the ever still depths of the ocean-like alaya. Though Asanga equates the alaya with what the Mahayana Abhidharma Sutra calls the realm or principle, dhatu, without beginning in time, which is the common basis of all dharmas. It is similar to the Theravada in Bhavanga consciousness, except that the alaya is seen to be simultaneous with the other forms of consciousness, while bhavanga is the intermittent resting state of mind consciousness. So there is a subtle difference between these two ideas. But what it says is that when we talk about living in samsara for countless lifetimes, and existing in samsara in this way, the question is when the consciousness is not active, how does it continue? That is the idea. Now, of course, we always discuss that nama and rupa exist interdependently, but then there is the idea of arupa loka in the Theravada Buddhism itself, that provides the explanation that there are beings without form, right? Then the question is, does it mean that only the consciousness function in this realm, and how does it work? So there is not so much of explanation that I found with regard to this. The explanations that I found says that, for example, when it says arupa loka or arupa dhatu, beings without form, there could be the possibility that probably beings are without forms, the kind of forms that we relate to or we know of. So probably lacking gross form, or probably there is a kind of subtle form or something that do not come under the discussion here. And from another perspective, how it is explained is that there is a particular type of meditation. It is called Sanya Vadaita Nirodha Samapatti. So that is the ninth state of meditation after the 8 jhanas. This is the ninth state, ninth attainment. And the explanation provided with regard to this attainment is that when somebody is in the ninth attainment, in the Sanya Vadaita Nirodha Samapatti, there is no Kaya Sankara, Vachi Sankara, or Mano Sankara. The mind completely stops functioning. People regard such a person to be similar to a dead person, and there are incidents mentioned in the Pali literature with regard to this, that a certain monk, after attaining Sanya Vadaita Nirodha, dwelling in the state of Sanya Vadaita Nirodha, and people thought that this monk passed away, so they have collected necessary materials to woods and grasses to burn this monk's body, but they were not able to do that because he was in the meditative state, even though people came to know that he is not really breathing, his breathing is stopped, but he's not dead, even though he appears to be a dead person. He is not dead. And in this state of meditation, he can live, it says, as long as 7 days, because after 7 days, if you cannot come back to life, in a way, you will die, because the body also needs energy, food, and everything. So you have to, you can stay in this state only for about a week, maximum 1 week. So here the discussion is, if the functioning of mind completely stops, then when he comes back to normal situation, normal life, how does he regain his consciousness? Okay, so then the idea is that if this is possible here, in the Sanya Vadaita, in the case of Sanya Vadaita Nirodha Samapatti, then the state of Arupa Loka, beings existing in the Arupa Loka, functioning of beings in the Arupa Loka is also similarly possible. Okay, so that is the explanation so far I got. Yeah, so the idea is that in the deeper layer of consciousness, in the unconscious mind, in terms of alaya vijnana or bhavanga chitta, the life force continues, right? And it continues with all kinds of sankharas, all kinds of karmic forces, all kinds of seeds. When a person performs actions or karmas, traces are left on his unconscious. Seeds of future karmic effects sink into the alaya, a receptacle which actively stores them, ready to later mature. The alaya consists of a series of chittas, accompanied by both karmic seeds and the seeds of potential defilements and memories. These all reproduce themselves over time, thus accounting for the continuity of personality through death and periods of unconsciousness when the 7 active consciousnesses are absent. The alaya is also said to contain some intrinsically pure seeds, the sources of religious striving. They arise from the profound depths of the alaya, the param alaya, or alaya which is beyond. This is designated as the immaculate consciousness, which is beyond the dualisms of subject and object, existence and non-existence, and as the dharma dhatu, the dharma realm or principle, or as dasness, equivalent to emptiness and nirvana. It is also regarded as beyond the individual unconscious and as a universal reality which lies within all beings. Here comes the idea of the Tathagata Garbha, matrix of a Tathagata. So among all kinds of seeds and sankharas, there are some pure seeds. They are regarded as intrinsically pure seeds. Param alaya, representing the immaculate pure mind that is beyond this, dualisms of subject and object, existence and non-existence, and so on. So all effort should be made to recognize this, to bring this into forefront. And as I have mentioned, there is this famous idea of 3 natures that is present in the Yogachara system of thought. They are called Swabhava, Parikalpita Swabhava, Paratantra Swabhava, and Parinishpanna Swabhava. While the Madhyamikas talk in terms of 2 levels of truth, a central Yogachara concept is that of 3 apparent natures, the 3 Swabhavas. Each is a perspective on experience which concerns both a type of real, a supposed knowledge, and a degree of reality that this knowledge relates to. As in the Madhyamika, the intention is to move from one's ordinary vitiated experience to that of the highest degree of truth or reality. For the Yogacharas, there is also an intermediary level of reality, though the Madhyamikas regarded this as an impossible mix of reality and unreality. Now among the 3, the first is Parikalpita, the mentally constructed or imagined. Parikalpita means imagined or constructed. This is what is structured by the subject-object discrimination, the common sense world of self, people and things, and objects of thought such as mental and physical dharmas, all wrongly seen as having real permanent essences or nature. Its degree of reality is 0. It is just an illusory appearance. As a kind of knowledge, it is taken in by the illusion, engrossed in the perceptual signs, nimitta, that are its general forms, as well as related details. It is the world of conventional usage, vyavahara, mediated by language. So whatever language we use to refer to a certain reality, all that concept, all that ideas, all that expressions come under this category, parikalpita. All are imagined, conventional, in other words. The second nature is paratantra, the other dependent. This is the level of relative reality in the form of the flow of changing mental phenomena, dharmas, properly understood, arising dependent on one another according to the principle of conditioned arising, as in the system of different types of chitta and accompanying mental states. It also refers to the relative knowledge which comprehends these phenomena as mutually dependent and impermanent. It is not the highest level of reality, however, for it is the very process which generates the subject-object duality and so projects the constructed nature. It is the construction of the unreal. Abhuta Parikalpa. So what it means is that Paratantra means here, if you look at this description, it says, when you talk about dharmas in terms of chittas and chaitasikas, so in the Abhidharma literature, these dharmas represent the ultimate reality of this constructed world, right? The world of experience. So that is how things are functioning, dependent on a certain, so you can say the interactions of the dharmas. That is the process. That is how things are going on. But it is because of this interdependent functioning of dharmas that the common sense experience or the conventional world appears to us. Okay, so in reality what is going on is this interplay of these dharmas. So that is called the paratantra swabhava. Okay, it is the process. The third and highest nature of nature is the parinishpanna, the absolutely accomplished. This is the absolutely real level, devoid of the subject-object duality, in which knowledge is perfected due to directly knowing the world as representation only. While the constructed is like the water in a mirage, the other dependent is like the mirage itself. The absolutely accomplished is like the complete lack of real water in the mirage. Or the first is like the illusory hairs seen by a person with cataracts. The second is like that which produces these illusions. And the third is like the unconfused objects seen by one with sound eyes. So with these two similes, I think it becomes very clear. Parinishpanna represent the understanding of things as they are. The first represent the emergent truth. The second represent the functioning of things, and the third represent complete understanding of that function. Okay, so finally it says, because it knows that the imaginary constructed is empty of a real nature, and that the interdependent phenomena of the other dependent level are also individually empty of an inherent nature, as in Madhyamika thought. The absolutely accomplished is knowledge of the very empty nature of all phenomena, that is emptiness. This nature is also known as dasness, tatatha, the inconceivable as it isness of reality, as the knowledge which knows it, knows it has totally transcended the subject-object illusion. It is the very dasness which it knows. Dasness is the very nature of reality, and the three natures are just three different perspectives on it of varying degrees of adequacy. So this is in brief the discussion of these three natures that you can find in the Yogachara system of thought, discussing about what we see conventionally, what is its true nature, and then the understanding of this true nature, the wisdom or the knowledge of this, interdependent functioning. Okay, so something that is discussed in terms of two truths in Theravada system of thought, in the Madhyamika system of thought, is discussed in terms of three natures in the Yogachara system of thought. So I will not go any further. This we can cover later on, probably, the idea of Tathagata, Garbha, and so on. But now we are going to, have some presentation. But before that, I'd like to show you this. I tried to find out some related and similar ideas that appear in the early Buddhist text related to the ideas of Madhyamaka and Yogachara. Okay, so similar to this explanation here, for example, this is the dedicatory verse in the Mula Madhyamika Karika of Nagarjuna, and how Nibbana is defined in early Buddhist text, and how the origination and cessation of dukkha is presented, and a particular instruction to Bahya Thera, and the explanation of Acharya Buddhaghosa, with regard to karma in its process. Ultimately, what he's saying that actually there is no one performing karma and no one receiving results and so on. So all these statements, I have collected just to show you and to compare the ideas of Acharya Nagarjuna, the emptiness idea of Acharya Nagarjuna, or the presentation of Paticca Samuppada in terms of these 8 negations. I can send this document to you, and then you can probably look at them and try to understand. And particularly, I mentioned here a few passages from Professor Karunadasa, how he, defined the Dharma theory in his Abhidharma text, how dharmas are understood. And this, okay, I will provide you this reference list, names of a certain text. If you are interested, you can look at this text, okay, to have better understanding of concept and reality, constructed and unconstructed, sankata and asankata, the Dhamma theory in the Theravada Abhidhamma system, and also, as I said, the unanswered questions discussed by Professor Karunadasa. You can particularly look at this book by K. Yanananda, Concept and Reality in Early Buddhist Thought. And then probably you can read it in relation to Acharya Nagarjuna's understanding of emptiness and so on. How, dharmas like self, nature, then even from the Yogachara perspective, what is parikalpita, imagined or concept, and what actually is reality. Any questions so far? No, this concept of Sanya Vedaita Nirodha is found in the Theravada system of thought, right? So when you are in that state of meditation, your sanya, perception, and your feelings stop completely, right? Probably, yeah. So when they arise from that meditation, they come back to normal life, normal state of mind. No. That is when you discuss the progression, you know, in the spiritual practice, especially those following samatha first, and then goes to practice vipassana, right? There are those who do not follow samatha. They just develop sufficient amount of concentration, then they proceed to practice vipassana, right? But if you are fully established in samatha, the samatha practice, that means you go through these jhanas, right? So that is the purpose of samatha. Jhanas represent higher level of concentration. Your mind is, you know, extremely concentrated, samatha. But of course, this mind is then accompanied by several positive mental factors. For example, in the first jhana, what you have is vitakka vichara, piti sukha ekagata. Gradually, when you have fourth jhana, you have ekagata and upekka, right? And then for the arupa jhanas, the object of meditation is different. Vijnana ananchayatana, akasa ananchayatana, right? Akincha ayatana, and then nevasayana sayayatana. So when you are, you know, proceeding towards this ninth stage of attainment, I think the process is that you have to, you know, go through all these stages of jhanas gradually. You cannot immediately go into this particular state, you know. But then what you are saying is developing this lokuttara chittas, lokuttara chittas. So this jhanic minds, jhanic chittas are still considered as lokiya chittas, right? After this, you have lokuttara chittas. Lokuttara chittas means chittas of Sotapatti, Sakatagami, Anagami, and Arahant. They are considered as Arya Puggala, right? So if you are following this samatha, then vipassana, then of course you go through all these jhanas, and then you proceed to develop your Sotapatti, Chitta, and so on. But if you are not following this samatha process, samatha meditation, you do not have to, you know, go through this jhanas. That is how we find there are arahants having abhinyas, and there are arahants not having abhinyas, right? Abhinya, yeah, higher knowledge. Yes. You cannot say the Nagarjuna's middle way and the Majjhima Patipada taught in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta are the same. But of course, both the text, discussing about middle path or middle practice, but they are not entirely same. So from different standpoint, the explanation provided or explanation contained in two different text or thought system is different. But of course, there are certain similarities as well. Okay, so I think probably I can play some of the presentations now.